If you grew up in the 90s or 2000s, you knew the Intel brand. It meant your computer had power. It meant quality. It meant that whatever computer you were using wasn't a piece of junk. For 40 years, Intel wasn't just a company. It was the Roman Empire of Silicon Valley. They had the smartest engineers, the deepest pockets, and a monopoly so aggressive the government tried to break them up. They were untouchable. But in 2024, the empire didn't just stumble, it collapsed. We are talking about the single largest destruction of shareholder wealth in modern tech history. They missed the iPhone, they missed the AI gold rush, and they literally started selling chips that self-destructed inside people's computers. How does a company valued at $500 billion lose its mind, its money, and its crown in plain sight? It wasn't bad luck. It was a suicide. If you like videos like this, make sure you like and subscribe. Now back to the story. To understand how Intel became the sick man of tech, you have to understand how terrifying they used to be. There was a man named Andy Grove. He was Intel's legendary CEO, and his motto was simple: only the paranoid survive. Andy didn't just want to win, he wanted to crush you. Under his watch, Intel operated on a brutal, relentless clock called tick-tock. Every 2 years, like clockwork, they made chips smaller, then faster, then smaller, then faster. While competitors were trying to figure out how to make a calculator work, Intel was literally printing money on silicon. They had a strategy called the IDM model. That stands for Integrated Device Manufacturer. It sounds boring, but stick with me, because this is the specific weapon they eventually used to shoot themselves in the foot. Think of it like a restaurant. Most tech companies like Apple or Nvidia write the menu, but they hire a massive kitchen, a factory, to cook the food. Intel was different. Intel wrote the menu, grew the vegetables, slaughtered the cow, and cooked the steak. They did everything in-house. For decades, this was their superpower. Nobody could manufacture better than Intel. They were the kings of the North. But there's a problem with being king. You stop listening to the peasants. And in 2005, a peasant named Steve Jobs made a phone call. Here is where the timeline splits. This is the moment Intel sealed its fate. Apple was building a secret device, something that would replace the PC, the iPhone. Steve Jobs went to Intel's CEO, Paul Otellini, and said, "We want you to build the chips for this phone." It was a silver platter, the biggest contract in history, and Intel said no. Why? Because the bean counters took over the asylum. Intel looked at the numbers and said, "Steve, you're not paying us enough per chip. The margins are too low. This phone thing, it's a toy. We make big chips for big computers." So Apple went elsewhere. They went to a British design firm called ARM and had their chips made by a Taiwanese factory. That toy became the most profitable product in human history. Intel didn't just miss a product, they missed the entire mobile revolution. While the world moved to smartphones, Intel was still sitting alone in a room, hugging a desktop tower. But amazingly, this isn't what killed them. They could have survived missing the iPhone. What they couldn't survive was hubris. While Intel was busy counting their pennies, a quiet revolution was happening across the ocean. Remember that chef analogy? Well, a company called TSMC decided to build the world's biggest kitchen. They didn't design chips, they just manufactured them. And they got really, really good at it. Here is the science bit. Don't click away because this is actually insane. To make modern chips, you need a machine that blasts molten tin with a laser to create plasma hotter than the surface of the sun. It's called extreme ultraviolet lithography. Intel, in their arrogance, decided they could do it their own way. They didn't need the new machines. They could tweak the old ones. They were Intel. They were wrong. For 5 years, Intel was stuck in process hell. They couldn't make their chips smaller. Their factories were failing. Meanwhile, TSMC bought the new machines. Suddenly, Apple, Nvidia, and even Intel's laughingstock rival, AMD, started using TSMC. And something impossible happened. The budget brands started making chips that were faster, cooler, and cheaper than Intel. The king wasn't just naked. The king was being lapped by a guy named Jensen wearing a leather jacket. If you want to know how bad it got, look at AMD. In 2014, AMD was a joke. They were basically selling space heaters that could vaguely run Windows. Intel had a 90% market share. But then AMD hired a new CEO, Dr. Lisa Su. She did something radical. She sold off AMD's factories. She said, "We aren't going to cook the food anymore. We'll just write the menu and let TSMC cook it." While Intel was stuck trying to fix their broken factories, AMD used TSMC's superior tech to launch the Ryzen processor. It humiliated Intel. For the first time in history, the Intel Inside sticker wasn't a badge of honor. It was a warning label that your laptop was going to overheat. And how did Intel respond? Did they innovate? Did they pivot? No, they panicked. Fast forward to 2023 and 2024, the catastrophic failure of the 13th and 14th gen processors. Intel pushed their chips too hard. They were so desperate to beat AMD on the charts that they literally pumped too much voltage into their own processors. The chips started oxidizing. They were physically degrading inside people's computers. High-end gaming PCs, servers, workstations, crashing. And Intel's response? Silence, then denial, then a software update that slowed the chips down. It was a PR nightmare. They faced class action lawsuits, but while they were fighting with gamers, they missed the second boat. And this boat was the size of the Titanic. In late 2022, ChatGPT launched. The world went crazy for artificial intelligence. Every company on Earth needed GPU chips to train AI. Nvidia, the company known for making video game graphics cards, became the most valuable company in the world. Where was Intel? Years ago, Intel had the chance to buy OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT. They passed. They had the chance to buy Nvidia back in the day. Read that again. Intel could have owned Nvidia and ultimately the shovel factory for artificial intelligence. But they passed. They focused on safe profits while the world changed. In 2024, in the middle of the biggest chip boom in history, Intel laid off 15,000 people. They suspended their dividend, something they hadn't done in decades. Their stock fell to levels not seen since the 90s. While Nvidia was feasting, Intel was starving. So, is the empire dead? Too big to fail is a myth. Kodak was too big to fail. Nokia was too big to fail. Enron, however, was not too big. Nor was Lehman Brothers or even Bear Stearns. Intel, once the dominant American chip manufacturer, is currently on life support, begging the U.S. government for bailout money to finish building factories that might be obsolete by the time they open. The Trump administration is standing over the ventilator, hoping for a sign of life. The lesson here is brutal. It doesn't matter how big your castle is. If you ignore the barbarians at the gate long enough, eventually they move in and redecorate. Intel spent 40 years building the future, only to become a relic of the past. If you enjoyed this deep dive into corporate destruction, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button.